Hi, my name is Lance McCord with Wellesley Hills Financial in Boston, and I'm joined by Mark Bishop. We are here today to talk about M&A activity, M&A acquisitions in the payment space primarily. And the general topic for the discussion today is when and why a company would consider selling their business. So I will give a quick view of what I think on that, and then I'll hand it over to Mark and let him jump in and talk as well. So, generally speaking, in my experience, the best time for companies to consider selling is when business is going good. And that may sound counterintuitive, but I've seen a lot of companies who, when things are going well, they don't want to sell, they want to keep reaping the benefits. And then when the economy changes or they lose a large customer or something else happens and the news is not quite so good, then they are thinking it's time to bail out and are anxious to get a deal done. So for numerous reasons, that's not the best strategy. And in my view, anybody thinking about selling their company should think long and hard before they enter the process to decide when they want to do it, why they want to do it, what they hope to get out of the sale, and plan for the right time to do it. Mark, what do you think?
Awesome. Appreciate that, Lance. And again, Mark Bishop, pleasure meeting everybody, and welcome to the podcast. And to Lance's point, it's tricky, and you can look at when it's time to be acquired or take on a significant capital raise at numerous times in your path. And you should have that in mind early on in the company in terms of what's our capital strategy, what are we looking at, and make sure you're partnered with a firm that can help you through that kind of as a advisory and or a friend in the industry, because you don't want to just go and talk to those you don't know. Make it part of your DNA to regularly speak with firms that have been out there before, experts that have been out there before, that actually understand and have done this in the past, and they can help guide you at that point in terms of what's the optimal path. Similar to what we've kind of established here at Wellesley Hills, we've created what we call the Fintech Payments Institute to really walk those companies through and take an early look at where are you in terms of your go-to-market, your ICP, your other areas. What is the market doing? What is the market bearing? And that's not your day job. And it is for us, and we've brought on executives that understand that. Lance is a wealth of knowledge in terms of doing that. Everyone else that's part of the team has seen these movies before, and so they know how to guide you in a very quick way and give you those tips and trades in terms of what does the optimal timing look like. We put ourselves in your shoes to see what that is. And so, don't rest. Don't think that you're going to figure out the optimal timing. That's kind of like day trading. It's a dangerous place. So you've got a friend in us, but befriend your people in the network that will help guide you through this in the different pieces.
Right. I think that's great advice, Mark. And I'll add to that a bit by saying that, when you're preparing for a deal or thinking about doing a deal, you know, most people think, okay, maybe it's time to sell for whatever reason, and they start looking for buyers, or they, if they're smart, they start looking for somebody to help them through the process. But planning for an eventual sale is, in my view, a very wise and important step in the process to sell your company. You want to give yourself, you don't want to do a fire drill, right? That buyers can smell fear, and they will react to that. So you want to give yourself plenty of time to be prepared for the sale, and to take steps along the way to maximize the value you can get out of the business. Almost all the payments companies that I know of have the same sort of structure, right? They're a sales organization. They share revenue with their partners, and with the processor, and they are selling their net piece of that puzzle. And there are a lot of things they can do to maximize what they can get for the business. Everybody, I think, well, most people, I assume, are familiar with buying out agents, whether it's your downline agent or another agent in the business who's not associated with you. Things like that can improve the valuation in a way that, other things can't. You can do it immediately. You can get the deal done quickly. A lot of times your agents are interested in selling anyway, and buying them out improves your EBITDA immediately and can be done in a very efficient manner. That's just one thing you can do to improve your valuation. Other things are looking at the makeup of your portfolio, high risk versus low risk. Generally, most of the ISOs that we deal with don't have a lot of high risk, but most do have some, and you have to consider that. Buyers will look for that. You also have to think about other issues like concentration of volume or residuals, basic things like that you have to consider. And there are things that you can do if you plan for those things. And an advisor can certainly walk you through what to do about that and how to get it done. So all those things, I keep saying the word planning, but I think planning for the sale is important. I talked to companies in the past who decided to do a deal, got into it, went through the process, looked at the price they were going to get based on the valuation, and then when they thought about the taxes they have to pay and the proceeds they have to share with their partners, and how much longer they're going to need the money, right? Are they going to sell at the age of 45? Are they going to sell at the age of 65? Two very different scenarios. And so a lot of them will get through that process and then realize, the large number they thought they were going to get for their company, which they got, they'll have to share with a lot of partners, and it may not be as large as they imagined when they started the process. So, again, advisors like Wellesley Hills Financial or your tax advisor are the kind of people that you should speak to when you're thinking about doing a deal, so that you are prepared as you begin the process.
Lance brings up a great point in terms of the external factors, not just the deal itself. Have you thought about all the ramifications about tax and your other shareholders and what's the next move and other things? And so I leave it to Wellesley Hills experts to kind of do that. My piece is, how do you prepare and be good stewards so that you're ready when you feel you're ready? Like, how do you create the discipline so that you don't just, it's not just a one time, it's actually how you run your business. Because when the money comes in, if you're already naturally doing what they consider the good things in the industry, or what does good look like, they're more adept to speak to you, because they're not like, wow, you've already got the discipline, you understand the KYC, you understand what banks are looking for, you're in the good graces of the card networks, you're really doing things the way we like to see it from the money side. They're going to be much more adept to speak to you and work with you on creative ways, because now it might not be, here's a check, walk away, or here's a check, stick around. It might be, hey, would you do some type of financing and an earn out for 3 years? Or, you know what, we like the management, and now we're able to just invest and sit back and watch, versus invest and throw in an executive and others. Because it's very key how you set yourself up in terms of who you attract to come in for the money. Because there are vastly different types of individuals that will come in and work with you. And so you need to define that, to Lance's point of planning, of what type of partner do you want when they come in at that point, and what's your exit strategy there. And right now, with the advent of AI, there's a lot of knowledge that you can gain. Before, you had to go get the knowledge. Well, now you can research part of the knowledge, but the problem is it doesn't have the execution of the knowledge. This is why you need the partners like a Wellesley Hills Financial, as well as the Institute, depending on where your gestation period is of when you're ready, where we can help you across the board, from setting you up for success, helping you create what good looks like, and helping you kind of define what type of partner you would like, because that's going to go a long way in terms of how you're going to either enjoy the process or feel that it's a long slog at that point. We're all about optimizing how this deal goes down for you, which is why we've created the Fintech Payments Institute, because now when you come to us, we've got the full gamut of, we know what good looks like, we can work with your team, whether light or heavy, and walk you through what the optimal path looks like.
Thanks, Mark. That's great. A couple of other things that I was thinking about while Mark was talking that I'd like to mention as an advisory sort of comment for sellers. one thing, at least another thing you have to think about is that when someone goes into this process, and let's say when you're ready to go to market and you put out some sort of a document, a teaser or whatever to buyers to get interested parties, from that point forward, the deal can kind of take over your day-to-day life, right? It, I won't say it's, it takes over the business, but it's just another thing you have to do that has a life of its own, and for a short period of time anyway, you're going to be putting it ahead of the day-to-day business, or at least you're going to have to share the day-to-day business. So, if you were busy before doing a process, you're going to be doing something different, but it's going to be even busier for a while, right? Just have to be prepared for that, and not everybody is, because they've never done it before, likely. The process does sort of take over your life for a while, and you have to be prepared for that. Another word of advice: everybody wants to do it quickly. The question I get on every deal from a seller is, how long will this take, right? How quickly can we get this done? And they're hoping 30 to 60 days, which is not realistic. Even, a clean deal that goes right through with no problems is going to take 120 days. It just takes a while to go through the process. You're going to get letters of intent, which you have to evaluate. Then you're going to the buyer's going to do due diligence, which is going to take them 30 to 45 days probably. You're going to have to deal with issues that come out of that. Then the lawyers get involved, then you have to draft documents. So all of that adds up, and it's certainly going to take 4 to 5 months to get a sizable entity deal done anyway. You have to be prepared for that and for the impact it's going to have on your day-to-day life of running your business. There are a couple of other things that I will tell you about the process in general. Number one, we get approached by a lot more buyers than we do sellers, right? I mean, every show I go to, I have a half dozen people come up to me telling me they're looking to buy either portfolios of assets or companies or both. And they give me different deal sizes they're thinking about. Do they need funding help? Yes or no? That kind of stuff. So, but there's always more buyers. And if you're lucky, you talk to 1 or 2 sellers at a show and get a qualified deal that you can go work on. And it's nice when you get those, because you have a roster of buyers who are looking for them. So that's a good thing for sellers. There's always more buyers. At least in my experience, there's always plenty of buyers. You have to find the right buyer, as Mark said earlier. You want to make sure it's the right thing for your business. Generally, when somebody's selling a company that they have built, it's their baby, and they may have started it from scratch, and they want to see it go to the right people who will take care of their merchants, take care of their employees, and continue to run the business in a prudent manner and do a good job with it. Right? They don't want to see what they built fall to pieces. So it's important to find the right buyer, but there are plenty of buyers out there, and certainly we can help you find the right buyer when the time comes. A couple of other things that in prepping for the sale, these are very tactical, specific things, but you're going to have to do things like make sure your financial statements are in good order. People always ask for audited GAAP financial statements. Most ISOs don't have that unless they've borrowed money or done some other process like this. So you're going to get that request, right? I will tell you, everybody asks for GAAP, which are generally accepted accounting principle financials with an audit. Most don't have that, but most agents and ISOs operate on a cash basis. Nothing wrong with that. It's a very good way, in my view, as an accountant, it's a very good way to run an ISO. Because this business we're in is a cash business. You get paid once a month. You pay your downlines at the same time, and the rest of the month you're paying your normal bills, rent, employees, and that sort of thing. So it's a clean business to report from a cash basis, but buyers often want to ask for GAAP accounting, and if it's a larger deal, you're almost certainly going to have to think about that. So anyway, the point of that long comment is that cleaned up financials, which are ready for buyer's inspection, are going to be important. Buyers will do quality of earnings. You'll hear that term, quality of earnings, and that means they'll have their financial experts look at your financials and ask questions and look for, for risks and weaknesses and things that might come up. That'll be part of the process too. People often take that personally and are offended by that, but you shouldn't. It's part of every deal. Similar lines, you have to look at your legal agreements. People, they sign agreements with their processors and their downline agents, and they use those to run their business. But other than the business terms that are in there, they don't think about it generally on a day-to-day basis. But there are items in the process agreement, especially that you don't think about it on a day-to-day basis, but will come to the forefront when you decide to do a deal. Most of the time, the processor has a right to make an offer to purchase your business if you decide to go through that process, whether it's a first right of refusal or a first opportunity to make an offer. They will generally have some rights in their agreement with an ISO. You have to understand that and prepare for that. Other things, your downline agreements, you'll want to make sure they will either be paid out as part of the deal, or they will be assigned to the buyer and continue to do business as an agent with them. Those kind of things. All those things are things that have to be considered when you're going through the deal. So those are just, there are other things, especially in the legal documents that you have to consider, but those are just important items that a good advisor, we keep saying the same thing about a good advisor, but a good advisor can help you think through. We've seen all those things a number of times on every deal. So, we know what you're going to get, we know what to expect, and we know how to deal with them when they come up. People panic sometimes because they haven't been asked those questions in a long time, if ever. So an advisor who's there telling you this is how the process is going to go and this is what you can expect as the next step is a comforting thing for a seller.
That's awesome stuff, Lance. And I've got to remember all those pieces that were in there. So let's piggyback off the advisor first. Are they genuine, and do they really understand the space, and did they come from the space? Are they a perennial deal person, or have they been an executive that's gone through the process a couple times and have now converted over to kind of be that true person who's also respected in the industry and is known in the industry? So look up your advisors too if you're looking out in terms of who's helping you supposedly through the deal. Make sure they're well connected, make sure they're well respected in the industry, and go check up on them. If you're not connected to them somehow on LinkedIn, they're probably not in your space at that point. They should only be a second layer away at that point if they're really playing in the space or not in some form or fashion. So make sure they themselves have the right street cred. If they left and was not your advisor, would you put them on your executive team? So give some consideration around who you're comfortable working with through this process. And as Lance stated, there's good buyers out there. There's a lot of buyers out there. I shouldn't say they're all good, but there's plenty of buyers that are out there looking for deals, but they're also looking for deals. And so you need to be careful that they're bottom fishing, or they're trying to bully you, or they're trying to take advantage. And so work with a group that helps you through that minefield of everything else. Because what we like to focus on too when we're on your side is really, what's your moat? Do you have multiple? What's really differentiating you? Is it the team? Is it the product? Is it your customers? Is it a regulatory thing? Whatever that is has to come out sooner rather than later. Otherwise, you become one of a number, and that goes into a different buyer pool. So I can't stress enough what your moat is as you're going through this process. And we may help you identify a different moat because we know what the buyers are looking for. You may think that because you do it every day, it's not your moat. We're like, no, that's a great moat to have, because I don't think you understand. There's not many that have that DNA that you've done it. Other people may be doing what you're doing, but you have two top executives that have been doing this for however long across multiple spectrums, and they're super respected in the industry. Pile on with that. I lovingly like to use the term, bring on those, use their NIL for good. Go find advisors, go find others that are really known in the industry. So as you know that you're coming up to a capital raise or some other raise, you should have some advisors and others to where if their face is on your logo and you're interacting with them, That gives you a little more street cred than the competition who might also be going for a capital raise. Any little thing that gives you an edge, make sure you're doing it. Because Lance mentioned it before that you feel your baby's special. Unfortunately, we're here to tell you it's not so special. So we're here to help you make it special in a form that you might not be aware of at that. So keep that in mind too as you're going through this process, because we're looking for any angle to help you optimize what that is. So it could be make your baby special. It might be it's not the right time. It might be you need 3 more months of solid KPIs. Your KPIs are through the roof. Great. But you don't have that many. Your quarters have kind of been off a little bit. We know what good looks like from a trajectory of what the buyers are looking for and of what the buyers that we feel are best for you are looking for. So you don't want to shortchange yourself either. So there's that healthy balance. But yeah, I wanted to talk about NIL. Your baby is special, but we like to help make it kind of super special. But make sure you're working with partners that understand that, have been in the industry a while, to really understand the game and have your back out in the industry. When we're speaking, we can help speak on your behalf, pull you into a meeting. You can never talk too early to an advisor, because we may help give you a little more street cred in these industry events or others, just because being seen means you're playing, means you care in the industry. The industry does care if you care at that point. If you're staying in your own bubble and you're like, look, I like my portfolio and I like kind of my space, well, that's one approach. But this is still a networked game. This is still people that see you feel, wow, you guys are really doing a lot, and you're constantly in the face of the industry, and you're constantly trying to improve payments or any type of fintech ecosystem of what it has, from protection and KYC. The name of the game right now is it deep fakes and agentic AI and all these other people. Be really smart about your moat and be really smart about your partners, but get out in the industry as well. And we can help with that. Other advisors can help with that, but we never stress that enough in terms of your industry footprint, in terms of what you're doing.
Great. Something you were talking about early on there that I was wishing I had thought of, so I'll talk about it now, is buyers, right? I told you there are a lot of buyers out there, and there are. And generally, most people who are doing this are reasonably well qualified to do it. Most buyers have been in the business for a long time. And a lot of buyers in the payment space are, processors are buyers. Other ISOs are buyers. Bigger ISOs are buyers. They're all looking for something that will enhance their business, and maybe they just want to add on some more monthly residuals, right? They can buy it at a multiple and sell it at a higher multiple, and they get the arbitrage in that. So, it's important to understand the buyer's motivations. But there are also buyers who, are unqualified, right, or not as qualified. Let's say that. One of the things I've learned in doing a number of these deals, you have to make sure you know how the buyer is going to be funded for these deals, right? Or for this specific deal. A lot of buyers will look for deals, participate in the process, put out a letter of intent, and if they get that signed, then they say, okay, now I got to go look for the funding, right? So it's important as an advisor and for the seller to ask for buyers to put the source of their capital for the deal in the letter of intent. And if they don't have, if they don't have good funds available to them, pretty readily, and just by asking a few questions, you can find out if they do or not. You don't want to give them an exclusive look at the deal. You can submit a letter of intent, and we'll take that under consideration, but we're not going to stop the process until you have funds available to do the deal. Those are things that you have to think about as you're preparing for this, because, as I said, there are lots of buyers. Some are qualified, most are qualified, some are not, right? And I can tell you from experience, the worst thing to do is get a buyer who then can't raise the capital they think they have ready to go, and you're locked up for 60 days, and it's a real painful experience. So that's an important consideration when we're thinking about doing one of these deals, and we always try to ask those questions up front just to protect the seller and make sure they get the most efficient process they can get. Mark has a consulting background, and I'm curious. I haven't asked Mark. This is a live question. I haven't asked Mark this question before, but in your past experience doing consulting, have you spent time consulting for companies who are thinking about, do I reinvest in my business or do I sell? And, what are the decision process they go through to think about those kinds of things, and, how you've dealt with helping walk them through that thought process as well.
Yeah, love the question, Lance. So thanks for that piece. And I'll piggyback off your buyer piece too,
Good.
of when you're partnering with someone, right? Not just the buyer, but in terms of your acquiring bank, your sponsors, your others that you're doing. Be smart about that too before you go for your sale or your capital raise. There may be opportunities in terms of banks getting into your space. There are a number of banks that are trying to get into the ISO space that are more willing to be flexible. You might get rock bottom pricing or at cost to help get them in the game. And so never underestimate the partners that an advisor can help introduce you to make sure that you're optimizing your footprint before you go for that capital raise. And it kind of leads into the consulting question that Lance just asked me of, it's one of many things that we do. I get asked often to come in as a fractional executive, whether it's a COO, a CFO, insert different C role of strategy or others, because they are looking for what's the next level, what's our next thing we need to do, what are we not thinking about in terms of that. Mark, you've been around the block enough, you and your practice now that you've established at Wellesley Hills, you've got a series of people that are really experts in this. How do we participate? How do we play? And so prior to coming to Wellesley Hills and now, it's coming in as a fractional executive and or a project just to come in and whiteboard with their executive team first to go through exactly what I just described. Who are your partners? What are your rates? What's your go-to-market strategy? What's your ICP? Really the basics that a deal looks for, and to see what's your maturity score across these, and really quickly sit with the CFO and the team to determine here's where you're leaving money on the table. Here's where you're not maximizing what you're doing. And because I've held their role numerous times for numerous companies, they feel comfortable because I'm speaking their language immediately as if I'm their brethren sitting at the table. And that's what we provide, in our practice here at Wellesley Hills too, is that type of comfort level to sit and speak CFO to CFO, chief strategy to chief strategy, insert different CIO to CIO. We've done it across the group depending on what their need is, and you quickly establish their gaps. So as a former PwC person, the first thing they teach you is what are the gaps and how do you solve it, and how can you solve it in that meeting. It's not, hey, well, let's meet 2 more times to really determine. You can dig deeper there. It's can you add value immediately when you sit there. And that's why we put this practice together at Wellesley Hills, because as clients are coming to us of, hey, I'm thinking about a capital raise, significant capital raise and or acquisition, great. Usually the tradition is, whether you go to Wellesley Hills or others in the past, let's look at your book. Okay, here's kind of our game plan of where we see some weaknesses, what you can clean up. Let's just work with you. Tell me how you're doing against that. Now we've got a practice that can say, hey, let's sit with your team to walk you through it, to give you hyper speed in terms of going from good to great, not to use an old term that we've done over the years, but to really understand you need to be great now to have access to the right capital that you're looking for. And that's really what this practice does. And that's what I've done for most of my career, the last 10, 15 years, of really being that fractional executive, from former being an executive in their shoes to now doing this in a fractional capacity across many organizations. Sometimes that just means sitting on a board or an advisory board. We can span that entire gamut to immediately start providing value with the end goal of how do we maximize your value, make your baby special again, make sure that everything is singing to the levels that you're looking for, but more importantly what the levels of the industry is looking for, and then you've got a song that's ready to sell at that point. Great question, Lance.
Yeah, Wellesley Hills has done, I don't know a number of deals, but I can tell you hundreds of deals over the last 10 years. And the database of contacts and relationships that the business has is very impressive. I can tell you that for a fact. Adam Hart and Anthony Malatesta, who have been doing this together for a long time as partners, know everybody. I mean, anytime I talk to anybody, they already know them, right? So they know everybody in the business. I know a lot of people in the business. My background was 10 years at Vantiv, which became WorldPay and then sold to FIS. So, I was doing this buying portfolios and companies on behalf of Vantiv for a number of years. And so by doing that, you meet people every day and at all the shows, and that sort of Rolodex of names serves you well later. And even today, 5 or 6 years after I left the company, I run into people that I met at Vantiv or worked with at Vantiv or talked to at a show sometime when I was representing Vantiv. So the relationships aspect of this is very important. And other advisory firms like this that I've worked with in the past, the thing that, in my view, the thing that makes some of them more successful as an advisor is the people they know, right? People call them for advice, and that is such a better way to start a relationship rather than calling somebody and saying, hey, here's what I do, here's what I can do for you. So, the word advisory is important in all of these, and knowing a lot of people in the business and having a history and experience with them is a vital asset for any advisory firm.
In terms of, you should never be making a cold call. Work with partners who know people, who know a girl, know a guy. It's a very small industry in a very large pot. And we know everyone, Lance, to your point. And so if you're making a cold call or you're trying to get in somewhere and you don't have an in, you need to work with people who already do have the in. It's just going to make your life so much easier, regardless of if you're going for a sale or not. Use and advise. Some type of transaction is going to happen. You're either going to be bought or you're going to sell. It never lasts forever. So you can't talk to advisors soon enough, but talk to those who know everybody. Otherwise, you're going to be spinning your wheels, kind of thing.
Right. And they're happy to tell you what they know, right? Everybody loves to tell you everything they know. I do the same thing. Somebody asks me a question and I give them a 2.5-minute answer. But that's right. You should talk to your advisors. And I will also tell you that a number of deals that I've seen talking about payments specifically now, have taken a couple of years, 2 or 3 years to come to fruition, right? Maybe they came to an advisory because they wanted a BIN, right? Happens all the time. And they asked, do you know a bank who can get me a BIN? And the answer is always, yeah, here's 3 names. We can talk to them, and here's what they do and how they do it. So, those are the kind of, day-to-day business things that an ISO may need that can lead to a deal somewhere down the road, right? Like I said, it might be 2 or 3 or 4 years before they do that. Those things are very helpful. They're also looking for lending a lot of times. Same discussion. The same banks, right, that do BINs and do lending, and it helps to people want to borrow money for lots of different things, right? They want to buy out their agents, or they want to invest in a new sales channel or a new product. Happens all the time, and if you're a small ISO, I shouldn't say small, but if you're an ISO and run by, someone owns their own ISO, they're 1 or 2 people, in a large sea of payments people, and they don't always know where to turn to look for those things, right? Maybe they have a bank who's not a big lender, and so they have to go find a bank, right? So there are people out there, and the advisory firms are the guys who can help you think through that. Wellesley Hills is certainly experts at that. We have a lot of relationships on the capital sourcing side, and we all know people who can talk to you about helping you with those needs, and they may lead to bigger opportunities down the road from an M&A perspective. So, very important to develop those relationships, as Mark said.
Right, and within FPI, ask us. We'll ping the entire Wellesley Hill network at that point. It helps set you up for what Lance just described in terms of setting you up for success, whether that's 6 months, a year, 2 years from now. It's not too early. We'll befriend you and do that. It's not some engagement where we're going to be charging big fees or other pieces. It's like we want to know the good success stories, because the sooner we can help in the beginning, the easier it is to get you what you're looking for in the end.
Right.
So
right.
If you bake yourself too much with poor process, it's really hard to rip it out and make it optimized at that point. So if we help you early on in terms of what good looks like, it's only going to make that exit or capital raise or whatever you have planned So much easier in the end at that point. And as we stated before, there's no one in this industry we don't know, like zero. It's we can call any firm at any time and have within 24, max 48 hours, someone anywhere in the world. I've been tested too many times. I was asked, all right, Mark, I need a point of sale in Dubai, and it needs to do this, and I need a chip that does this, and it's got to fit in a space like this. 24 hours later, they were on with a firm in terms of who could supply that device onto their point of sale. So it's that type of reach that we have that the others don't. And so only work with advisors that have that type of reach, because time means money and it's only getting faster. And you're not going to get there through AI. You wouldn't be able to search that. Even if you searched it and you try to find, here's your top 10 companies. Do you know anybody in those companies? Are you going to call the salesperson who then has to talk to a manager who's then going to talk to somebody else? No, I went straight to the CEO and worked backwards from that point. That's how we operate at Wellesley Hills. We don't wait, you go to the decision maker. And so through this entire process, you're going to be with decision makers this whole way. So you better be ready for the ride too, because we can get there fast, or you can tell us to pump the brakes. But either way, you have that speed available to you.
Yeah, very good. I'll give a war story of mine. I have a friend was the CEO of a glass manufacturing company, not in the payment space, but it was a family-owned business. They brought him in as a CFO to run the company, and they were going through their life cycle, and the company had been in business for a long time, almost 100 years, I think, and they were trying to decide whether they should sell or not. They knew, they probably should. The management team and the family members who were owners were getting older, and they knew it was time, right? But they missed their opportunity. Back to what I said at the very beginning of this call, they waited until things started going the wrong way, and then they tried to do a panic deal, and it didn't work, right? They didn't get the price they wanted. So they brought my friend in as a CEO to help him prepare for that sale and execute it. And he was a little frustrated. He had lots of conversations with him about it, but all they did was talk, right? And I'm talking about for a couple of years. And so he brought me in to sit on the board with him and help them prepare for the process, right? And so, first of all, it was wonderful because as an advisor, you normally don't get that sort of inside information, right? And certainly that sort of inside influence. But it was a great thing for me to sit on the board for a year and see them go through the decision tree as they were thinking about what to do and how to do it. And they would ask me my opinion on what they should do and why, and I would give that to them. And eventually we got them there, right? But the point of all that is what Mark was saying. Talk to your advisors; they're your friends. They're the ones that are trying to help you, just like your attorney, although for different reasons. And so, they're the people you want to talk to early and often as you're considering a process or, getting ready to go into a process. They want to be there for you, and help you get the best deal you can get for yourself and your business.
This whole session that we're doing right now, if your advisor wouldn't be a good fit into your team as an advisor or the C-suite, probably the wrong advisor company that are there. There are a number of advisors that are just advising on the deal, not advising on your business. And so only use advisors that can advise on your business to help you with the deal, not the other way around. So just be very careful of, there's a number of people getting in this game in terms of, I've got buyers and sellers, and I'm just going to put you two together, and here's kind of what the deal is for other pieces. I know I wouldn't be comfortable doing it, and so we've created this practice around, again, what does good look like? You've heard me say that too many times, but it's so important, because if you can't trust the person that's there, or worse, they couldn't help you in your business, how much are they really helping with the deal? I'm not saying they couldn't help you with the deal, but it's probably not optimal for you at that point, because there are other choices that you can make. Why not use those choices versus something fast and quick? And unless you're in an emergency mode and that was an ideal fit, great. We're not snake oil salesmen. We're not trying to push a buyer down your throat or anything else. Is it optimal? Is it not optimal? And it's your path, not our path. And so just keep that in mind when you're working with an advisor, that it's always your path, and we're just helping you kind of craft what that path of where it's headed at that point.
Right. Well said.